Hey folks, David here on the Vintage Future once again. And today I just want to show you my pair that I'm going to be using for the Stitchdown Thunderdome Patina competition, which I'm really excited about. If you don't know what Stitchdown is, Ben Robinson started it a few years ago. It's basically like a professional journal, blog about high-end footwear. I'm really loving it. They have a podcast. They've got tons of articles online that you can access for free. Or if you want to join Stitchdown Premium for a few bucks a month, you'll get into the Stitchdown Discord forum, great community of people to talk to there about the high-end footwear. I'm loving it, and you get discounts to different boot companies and stuff. So really enjoyed that. I've actually written some articles for Ben, so for what that's worth. So I love the stuff. I love Stitchdown. Highly would recommend that. They're having this competition. It's a patina competition. The way you win is basically have like the coolest, most tasteful patina. So it's not just the guy that can beat the crap out of his boots that's going to win. To even the playing field, it's how is your leather aged and how fascinating does that patina look, you know? And so I've been wanting something from Brass Shoe Company, Brass Tokyo, a Clinch, for a while. And so I got these HiLiner boots. And so I just want to talk to you about what they are, some of the specifics, and why did I choose this particular pair of boots? Because obviously this is pretty unique, like just in general, not just at the competition, but generally no one's going to be wearing a boot like this. So basic features, why I like them, how I sized, and then at some later date I'll give you an update. Okay, so first of all, Minoru Matsura has Brass Shoe Company in Tokyo, Japan. And the way he started that was he was actually a cobbler before, and he would repair all kinds of vintage shoes. And through that, he was inspired to resurrect, to revive a lot of the old methods that shoemakers and bootmakers back then used to use, which are now basically dead, or at least in most of the world. And so he started manufacturing his own shoes and boots using a lot of those methods. And so he has several brands. Clinch is probably the most famous one. These are Clinch. But Brass Shoe Company has a few other brands as well that they manufacture. But he makes them all. And so if you look here, you'll see that it's welted, but it's hand welted. The out stitch is machine stitched, but the inside is hand welted. So this is a reproduction O'Sullivan top lift here, heel cap, and then a leather sole with a topi on it from the factory. I didn't have these put on. I'm going to be wearing these for the competition and have not worn them yet. But yeah, he put that on. And then, as I said, welted, unstructured toe. It's like really nice and soft. Leather heel counter, contrast stitching all over the place. You got 6 brass eyelets, and then the rest are speed hooks. This is a 14-inch boot, by the way. If you measure from here all the way to the top of the shaft, it's 14 inches. Goes about to the middle of your calf, so it's definitely big, but it's not like, oh my gosh, it's not up to your knee or anything like that. For me, this is going to work out well because I'm in California, and the competition is going to take place during the fall and winter when it's cold and rainy and stuff. If it was during the summer, I don't think I would use a boot like this as hot and constricting as this would be. Contrasting tongue, nice and soft. I don't know what leather this is. I could probably ask them. I should probably do that. But the whole upper is made out of Wickett and Craig Latigo leather. I've heard this doesn't have much stretch from all the people who have this same kind of Latigo leather from Wickett and Craig on a lot of other Clinch models. And, not having worn it, I must say, I can see why. This is kind of rough and dry in here, whereas the tongue is like a lot of other leathers, more soft and almost feels suede. This is very rough and scratchy and dry. It's like a little bit cardy, like cardstock paper. And the only thing I've ever experienced quite like it is this veg tan belt I have from Pigeon Tree Crafting, which is made from harness leather from the Herman Oak Tannery in St. Louis, Missouri. So it's literally harness leather, like equestrian leather. You know, you would make like bridles and saddles and stuff like that for horses and oxen out of this stuff. This is the same kind of thing. It's got the same kind of vibe. It's very hardy. So that's the leather. I chose these boots for a couple reasons. One, as I said, the competition for me is in the fall and winter. So this is kind of like a rain boot almost, right? It's like tall, keeps your legs dry and all that. So that seems to work well for cold weather, especially since there's a topi on it, so I'm not going to be slipping around on wet surfaces. Another thing is it's really unique. There's nothing quite like it. The closest thing to this would be the Gloria boot from Red Wing. The reproduction that they're making now is a woman's boot. So for men, you know, this is really all there is. You know, I can't say that there's a ton of people wearing stuff like this. You know, it is pretty loud. Granted, I'm not going to wear this over my pants, you know, so you're not really going to be able to tell. But this is a throwback. It's supposed to be inspired from like a 1930s motorcycle boot or maybe a 1930s hiking boot. And here's some pictures of a guy on a motorcycle wearing them back then. And then, you know, here's some Boy Scouts from the era. And so you can see where this is inspired from. So that was really cool to me. But overall, the biggest reason that I chose these is because of the leather. Matsura-san, Minoru Matsura, the guy who owns this Clinch place and runs Brass Shoe Company, he is what I would call a leather artist. He's not just a bootmaker or a shoemaker, he's a leather artist. So he very, very intentionally, specifically plans on how he wants this leather to age. Not just the boot, the leather. And so he takes this Wicket and Craig leather and he hand dyes it black. It's almost more of a teal color. And he does that with all his boots and shoes. He will specifically plan how he wants it to age. So there's like the black and the brown horsebutt leathers that he uses from the Merriam Tannery, and he hand dyes those as well. And they're all meant to age in a very intentional way. And so I thought, man, it's a patina competition. And I just like leather anyways. So why not get something that's supposed to be engineered, planned, you know, created to look a certain way and just have this really great look when it patinates. And so they look like this now. They look like this in this picture here. And what they are supposed to look like eventually, maybe not in the amount of time I have during the competition, but eventually they'll look like Minoru's personal pair, as you see here. Mind-blowing, right? Well, as I said, he's a leather artist, so he plans on it going that way. So these are just absolutely incredible, just nuts, absolutely bonkers, right? So I just thought, man, who wouldn't want to have a boot like that, especially with this much surface area? Like having a 6-inch boot that could look like that is one thing, but having this boot that the whole thing, all this beautiful leather could look like that, I mean, that's worth it. Even if I don't win, you know, I'll just love to have a pair of boots like that because I'm such a big fan of the leather. With the horsebutt boots, just to give you an idea of how crazy this guy gets with the leather, when he does the horsebutt boots, he plans on them rolling a certain way across the vamp. And if he manufactures a pair of boots and realizes it's not going to roll the way he wanted, he'll throw that pair out and start over again, which is partly why you pay the premium. So what about quality control? Well, typically, I wouldn't go for contrast stitching. I typically do not like contrast stitching. I like contrasting hardware and contrasting edge dressing, but stitching, I usually prefer that to kind of blend in with the leather. But I like it here because it showcases just how neat the craftsmanship, the workmanship is. There's a couple problems, so I'll show you those to you now. Like right here, this was supposed to be a single stitch, and it's a double stitch, you know, or right here on the inside, this stitch kind of veers off the top at an angle, or like if you look right here, the inner layer just sticks out ever so slightly right here along the cut edge. You know, it's not quite flush, you know, but like honestly, that's it. Like that's it. Like you even look on the inside here, Often when they're welting with a machine, as they get to this area right here, you'll see the stitch stray out or in, and it gets all chewed up. Especially with like a Pacific Northwest boot. I've had a lot of experiences with brands like Wesco or Whites or Nicks. Granted, they're work boots, so I'm not knocking them. They're just work boots. Where, yeah, when you get to that point, even a Viberg here and there, but Viberg's a lot better these days. Once you get to that point, the stitching just kind of goes crazy, and this is like, it's hard to see, but all the way up in there, it is clean. So there's a couple issues here and there for sure. Like I said, just little tiny stuff, but overall, you could have contrast stitching on something like this because overall, it's just like as immaculate as you could get with a machine. You know, when you're gonna go totally hand stitch stuff, you know, bespoke, a totally different story. This is not that good, but for what it is, I'd say that's pretty incredible. Okay, so what about sizing? Well, basically, if you have a low instep, like me, and a skinny foot, like an Asian type foot, like mine, or obviously Minoru is a Japanese person, and so he has a very Asian foot, really small, dainty, low instep kind of feet, you go true to size. You know, I wouldn't go a half size down. I have a pretty low instep, and if I went a half size down from my Brannick, I'd be uncomfortable in the instep. That's just how low the instep is. So true to size, I would say. If you have what you would call a normal foot and you want to wear this last, this is the classic narrow last, the CN, the original Clinch last. If you want the CN last, you could probably go a half size up. That's what Jake from Almost Vintage Style did, and some others do that. Now, if you have a high instep or a foot that's got high volume or a lot of flesh on it, I would say do not get the classic narrow last. You will not be able to make it work without a lot of discomfort and stuff. It's not a good idea. You should get the classic wide last, the CN wide, developed in conjunction with Standard and Strange in Oakland, California. Contact them. Neil, Jen, Mari. Neil's the owner, along with Jeremy, the co-founder. You know, all of them super great people. I've dealt with them many times. Neil helped me with sizing for these and another pair we were talking about. You know, so I would go to them if you have your standard Western European kind of foot, which is bigger than an Asian foot. But if you're like me, you got that really kind of dainty sort of foot, this is actually perfect. In fact, I've never found any American or Western or European boot that had a last quite like this, which makes sense. You know, a European is going to design with European feet in mind because that's what they know. An American with American feet in mind. An Asian with Asian feet in mind. And so I think this, I haven't really worn them yet, right? Like I've just tried them on. So I think though, when I start wearing them, I'm going to find that this might be the last that's most like my foot shape. But doesn't mean it'll fit the best. There's a lot of aspects of fit other than just the basic shape. But from what I can tell from just trying them on, I think this will end up being like the best shape last for my foot that I've ever tried. So the conversion there would be like this. The classic last is a US 10, which is the equivalent to what they're calling a UK 9.5, which is the equivalent to a Clinch size 11. So my Clinch size is 11, which is the same as a US 10 Brannick. You know, that's how I read it. And if I went down to a 9.5, I probably wouldn't be able to get them on my feet. So you do that though, and you'll get good alignment. My ball is right where it should be. My toes, you know, leave an inch or two in the front, which is good. The heel and the waist, it all feels right. The arch support, he molds his insole, so there's an arch support per se, like usually added leather or something is like a little bump in there. Instead what he does, he soaks his insoles and he curves them with like the curvature of your foot. So the support and all that though is aligned properly as well. So I think I sized right. I asked him, I asked tons of friends on Instagram who were very kind. I asked Neil at Standard and Strange. And so that's the deal. So I'm really excited to get wearing these, and you know, who knows how I'll fare in the competition, but I want to wish everyone in this competition the best of luck. I hope we all just have a ton of fun and get to see some really cool boot pictures, because whether that's what it's about, you know, and some of us will win, and I'll be happy for whoever that is. So thanks for watching. I'll give you an update when I've, you know, worn these the whole time and see what they can do, and, you know, give you the full review then. But until then, let your boots take you to places more important than the boots themselves, and I'll see you next time.